it from the moment I finished it till probably I went to the Dublin Film Festival, and it was shown last year, and I saw it for the first time, and I actually liked it. It's the one thing you were asking, earlier about zombie as well, is, people just, whatever its, failures, and people just have the most enormous affection for it. They love it, and just as they love Zombie 2 or Zombie Flesh Eaters, whatever it's called, they also love, despite its sort of absurdities, alien contamination. I love doing it. I love being in Colombia. I was attacked by a thief. I had my sort of wrists slit open by someone who was after the jewellery I just bought in a sort of shop to take home to my wife. And when I told my wife, she said that she'd actually been attacked at knife point by someone 20 miles away from where I was sort of held up. And when the man who attacked me got 10 years in jail. And when my wife, this is going slightly off key here, when my wife had identified the man who had robbed her at knife point, they said that he was wanted for 20 murders and that she was lucky to sort of get off and sort of scot-free. But it's the problem with most of these films actually was that the scripts were written and then rewritten into English, and the English they translated it into was B movies in the late 40s. This was true, very much true, I thought, of Zombie. The dialogue in it was pretty dire, and we all did our best with it and tried to make it sound convincing, but sometimes it was very, very difficult.
Michael Fulci had a fanboy moment this morning with Richard, and he would like to replicate it.
Yeah, I have to ask you again, sir, if you wouldn't mind, for me and for everyone here, saying the wonderful first line from the movie for everyone here.
Work up to it.
The boat can leave now. Tell the crew.
Thank you very much.
We've got a question from this side of the room here.
Hello, and thank you all for coming. Well, I grew up in the 80s, so I saw a lot of the horror films that came out in the 80s, but it wasn't until about 10 years ago that I began seeing European horror films. They were rare over here. But for Zombie, it was about 10 years ago that I saw that for the first time, and well, I didn't know that you all aren't American. Because either your voices were dubbed or you have really great accents. Anyway, I wanted to ask Mr. McCulloch and I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Mr. Johnson. Sorry. What was it like working in the Royal Shakespeare Company, and also did you do any movies with Christopher Lee or Peter Cushing or any Hammer films?
It's a two-parter.
Okay. I was very, very lucky. I went to Oxford University and I took a history degree. I sat my last exam at Oxford on a Wednesday morning, and on Wednesday afternoon I was rehearsing at Stratford with Vanessa Redgrave as a full-time member, long-term contract member of the Royal Shakespeare Company. And to me, it was just like being back at university. You had tutorials in verse speaking, you had tutorials in fencing, in movement. It was the most wonderful experience of my life, to be paid, to be actually in this theatre company. And every night, Peter Hall, who ran the company, said that I was to go front of theatre and watch every show that was on. So all the plays that I was sort of not in, I just stood at the back and watched them. But for me, it was the most sort of marvellous learning experience. And going back to what I said earlier, and I say often about this gentleman on my right, if he had not gone into the movie business in such a way and also become a producer for such a long time, he would be one of the great figures in the English theatre since the war. This man is a really, really remarkable actor, and for one actor to say that about another is really something special. He is a very special actor, this gentleman.
Do I tell you now?
In the film, I'm actually. I couldn't do an American accent, I'm afraid. Whenever I do accents, I have to twist my face up. I come from Glasgow, and for me to do a Glaswegian accent is, I just have to distort my face to such an extent that I should be in a horror film in any case. So I said to Lucio Fulci, because Peter West, my character, was supposed to be American, and I said when we started filming in New York, would you mind if I can't do this accent, so can I be something else? And he then wrote in the little scene which he's in himself in the newspaper, and he's the editor, and he says something like, just because your uncle bought this newspaper, you limeys think you can do whatever. So that's how I sort of got away with that.
Yeah, yes, I joined the Royal Shakespeare Company in the 50s, actually. Should I give this away? And I'd been in the theatre for 10 or 12 years before that. And I had made a kind of success in some other plays in London. And I was sent for by the director of the Royal Shakespeare Company at that time, a gentleman called Glenn Byam Shaw. And he said, would I come and meet him and the leading lady of the forthcoming season, who was an actress called Dame Peggy Ashcroft, one of the great, great stars of the British theatre of that period. And so I, with a certain amount of trepidation, went along to this meeting, which was held in the Hyde Park Hotel in the centre of London, and I was invited to tea in a very British way, and we go to have some tea with them in the hotel. So I went. I was very, very nervous and shy and scruffy and all that kind of stuff. And Dame Peggy and the director she was actually staying in the hotel, so I was waiting in the hall for them to come down, and she came down the steps and she saw me. The director told me later, she saw me standing at the foot of the stairs, and she turned to the director and whispered in his ear, "He won't do." So fortunately, I didn't know this had happened. But anyway, we had tea, and the director said nothing really about what he was proposing that I should do in the forthcoming season. And finally, I plucked up enough courage to say, "Yes, well, Mr. I'm sure, what did you have in mind?" And he said, "Well, we're looking for somebody to play Orlando in As You Like It, Antony in Julius Caesar, Postumus in Cymbeline, and what was the fourth one? I think it was Don John in Much Ado About Nothing." The company was a very, very distinguished actors, and I was rather shocked that I would be playing these magnificent leading parts. And anyway, the tea broke up, no things were said, well, we would like you to join company, that kind of thing. And so we went out onto the front porch of the front steps of the Hyde Park Hotel, which exist today exactly as they were 50 years ago. I often pass them, in fact. And he said goodbye to me on the steps there, and shook his hand. And I said to him, Mr. Byam Shaw, I would give my right arm to be in your company. That's when he gave me the job. And it was a moment when one's life changes, and I thereafter fell deeply in love with Shakespeare and his works, and still am. And one of the good things about falling in love with Shakespeare is that he won't deceive you ever. He's always got more to offer. He speaks to your soul. It's a wonderful experience to play in Shakespeare, and I've been doing it really ever since, not all the time, because that would be too much, but I do very often play in Shakespeare. And I'm just about actually, I'm starting it right now, a website about playing in Shakespeare called Shakespeare Masterclass, and it's about how to find your way into Shakespeare, because many, many people think they're never going to be able to understand Shakespeare because the language is so not current. He's got this massive